Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We've got some tier set changes for 3 of our 6 tanks that were announced earlier this week and will be in the next beta build. The changes that are being implemented address both over and under performance for Prot Warrior, Prot Paladin, and Guardian Druid. I'm going to touch on what the original set piece bonuses did, and then review the newly updated changes and provide a little bit of context. So first up, we'll get into Protection Warrior. So for Prot Warrior, the 2-piece allowed Revenge to grant you something called Vanguard's Determination. This increases your damage done and reduces the damage that you take by 4% for 5 seconds. The 4-piece made it so that when during Vanguard's Determination, you gained Ignore Pain equal to 10% of the total damage that you're dealing. So to break this down, the 2-piece comes down to be just a great bonus for any scenario, but would be strongest when tanking multiple mobs and provide that 4% DR to every mob hit by Revenge. The additional damage done is also going to be a really nice gain as well. The 4-piece is a really nice set bonus that will provide Ignore Pain value based on how much damage that you're dealing within the Vanguard window. Since all you need to do to proc Vanguard is press Revenge, you'll generally have this buff up even when you're not tanking. You'll not really need to change your rotation to fit the damage window for Vanguard, and the main reason for that is because Revenge is already core to your rotation. But you'll probably want to make sure that you have this up during execute windows for sure to take advantage of that and stack Ignore Pain. This is going to allow Prot Warrior to contribute even more during the execute phase, since Ignore Pain is going to be just passively stacked based on the damage that you're doing. I had originally said that this was an S tier set, and the change really kind of nerfed the amount of Ignore Pain that you're gaining. So it's cutting it from a 10% gain based off the damage that you deal down to 5%. Doesn't do a whole lot in terms of making it less good. It certainly decreases the value of Ignore Pain, but the amount of damage that you're able to do and the ability to keep up Vanguard, it's actually pretty easy to do. So there's kind of no reason to panic here. It's still a great piece of tier, and the nerf was probably needed. Warrior has been overperforming across the board. We'll go ahead and shift over to Prot Paladin now. So as a refresher, the 2-piece set bonus for Prot Paladin was that Avenger's Shield would grant you a buff called Versatility of Light. This would increase the versatility of you and your closest ally by 4% for 4 seconds. The 4-piece then would make it so that when you cast Hammer of the Righteous or Blessed Hammer, it would increase your parry rating by a percentage over a certain duration, and then extend the duration of Versatility of Light by 1 second. So the 2-piece alone was not anything to get overly excited about. It wasn't going to change the way you played rotationally. You would still be weaving in Avenger's Shields and popping them just like you do today with Divine Toll, but it was unclear whether or not the effect was going to stack or not, and it also seemed pretty difficult to be able to extend the buff given the fact that it was only up for 4 seconds to begin with. But the 4-piece is what ultimately had the potential to make the 2-piece more interesting, giving you the ability to extend it. So what's new about Protection Paladin is that the 2-piece set bonus was changed. So instead of it being a 4% buff to your versatility, it'll now be a 5% buff. And they've changed the duration of this buff from 4 seconds to 10 seconds. So now that 4-piece, where when you cast Hammer of the Righteous or Blessed Hammer, it gives you the parry rating, but it also gives you the ability to extend the Versatility of Light buff by 1 second. Now that it's up for 10 seconds, that buff is much easier to extend, and therefore is going to have higher uptime overall. So good news for Protection Paladins, it's going to give you a slightly better versatility buff, one that's a little bit more reliable, and it's also going to be relatively useful for co-tanking in raid settings and items like that. So I'm sure that's something that can be thought about. However, the effect is minimal when you compare it to what the other tanks are getting. At this point, I'm probably looking at Paladin as having the potential to be the worst of the 6 tanks just based off of this, and the fact that I don't really feel like their talent tree is really as fluid as the other tanks. So I'm probably the most down right now on Protection Paladin. So this finally brings us to the Guardian Druid. And if you didn't watch my last video, I'll go ahead and recap by saying that I originally had scored the 2- and 4-piece set bonuses of the Guardian Druid as F tier and a need for a total rework. I had said the set did not really complement the class and spec talent trees, and that the talent trees for Guardian Druid, while promising, just took a major step back with the original tier piece set bonuses. So Blizzard, not necessarily listening to me, but really the community as a whole, agreed and decided to go ahead and redesign the set bonuses. So the original set bonuses, to just provide a baseline, we're going to make it so that the 2-piece made it so that Gore had a 5% increased chance to trigger, and that Gore also increased Mangle's damage by 10%. So it was entirely a single target throughput, and only when Gore was proccing. So it gave it a 5% additional chance to proc, additional damage, single target fine, everything else not so fine. The 4-piece made it so that Mangle and Thrash dealt an additional 5% increased damage, but Mangle would also heal you for 100% of the damage that it dealt. So it would force you to use Mangle even in a AoE situation, which just felt bad in general, and really kind of interrupts the way in which you played Guardian Druid when you're swiping and thrashing and doing things in M+, and it just, Mangle was only core to the rotation after Gore proc anyway. So the newly designed set bonus is something I'm actually really excited about, and I'm excited to test it in next week's beta build. So it was completely overhauled, and it reads as follows. The new 2-piece set bonus makes it so that using Mangle with Gore also deals 30% of damage dealt to nearby enemies. That damage is going to be reduced beyond 5 targets, so the primary 5 targets are going to be hit with that additional 30% damage, and then after that you're going to have diminishing returns. And it's also going to increase your damage done and reduce the damage that you take by 5% for 6 seconds. So it's actually giving you a little bit of damage reduction to kind of bring it in line with the rest of the tanks. The 4-piece set bonus now makes it so that Gore has a 5% increased chance to trigger, and using Mangle with Gore will heal you for a math problem, really a percentage of health over 6 seconds. The developers note that they're including with these changes is as follows. The previous version was low in power compared to other tank bonuses. This design makes Mangle with Gore procs give consistent durability and damage, and gives Mangle an AoE component, so it's worth hitting over swipe and AoE to maintain the buff. So this was my primary complaint, just the fact that in AoE situations or just rotationally, it felt better to go thrash and swipe, and you would only hit Mangle on Gore procs, and generally you would prioritize that only in single target, but you would ignore it in AoE situations. So the way that this is working now is going to make it so that pressing Mangle is going to feel much better given the fact that it will affect AoE. So going back to this new 2-piece set bonus, where using Mangle with Gore also deals 30% of damage dealt to nearby enemies. That is going to be phenomenal for any content. Doesn't matter if it's raid or M+. The damage is going to be reduced beyond 5 targets, which is completely fine, and it also is going to increase your damage done and reduce the damage that you take by 5% for 6 seconds. If you're watching everything that's been going on, you may have noticed that Gore procs like crazy, and prioritizing Mangle in this scenario is going to feel good knowing that you're able to do AoE damage and that you're not potentially missing out on threat or other things that could potentially happen as well. So I'm very excited about this change. This completely changed my outlook on Guardian Druid after my last video, and I would actually say that the Guardian Druid tier, pending further testing, looks to be just as good as some of the other, A tier set bonuses at this time. The 4-piece, where Gore is going to give an additional 5% increased chance to trigger. Great, you feel it. Definitely you feel it. It's only 5%, so Gore was proccing like crazy, really without me trying in this video. So when I'm able to test the tier in live M+ testing scenario or raid testing or whatever it might be, I think I'm just going to have a completely different outlook on the tier set in general. So right now on paper, looks really, really good. I would reclassify this tier, as I mentioned, as A overall in the rank and file of the different tier specs, with me being highest on Warrior and probably Vengeance Demon Hunter right now. But Druid is right there in that mix as well. And then Paladin kind of gets knocked down as far as, you know, the power of tanks. Blood is looking great. Brew is looking great. But right now, Paladin is probably the one that needs to look at this point. So I'll leave it at this. The spec that I'm playing this video, if you're wondering why I'm getting so many Moonfire procs, I'm playing the Disco Bear spec. I can go ahead and post a link to that as well. And would love to hear your comments, love to hear your feedback, and happy to answer any questions just kind of based off of testing that I'm doing. But I'm personally really, really excited for Guardian Druid.